She stopped desiring you the moment she could read you, when your every message came on schedule, when your emotions were always visible, when your intentions were delivered like a map. She lost tension, and with it, she lost attraction. Understand this: a man who reveals everything destroys his power, not by cruelty, but by certainty, and nothing suffocates desire faster than certainty. You believe that explaining yourself makes you stronger. You believe that clarity will earn you closeness. You believe that if you just tell her what you want, how you feel, what your next step is, she will appreciate your honesty. That is the lie you were raised on. It is the lie that broke you, because no woman begs for what she already holds. She begs for what she does not fully understand. She obsesses over the unsolved. She returns to the unpredictable. This is not manipulation. It is law, and if you wish to rule her imagination, her focus, her craving, you must become the man who is impossible to fully grasp. Machiavelli knew this well. Power is not in the declaration. It is in the hesitation, the silence, the uncertainty you impose on others. To control without resistance, you must move without prediction. Your power must be sensed, not spoken. Your presence must feel like both a promise and a question. In this tension, she orbits. In this distance, she leans forward. But if you give her the whole script, if you let her know your next move, she steps back, not because you were too strong, but because you were too simple. This is not about cruelty. This is not about deceit. This is about reclaiming the mystery that modern men were trained to surrender. It is about strategy. It is about letting your silence speak louder than your reassurance, your unpredictability louder than your pleading. I will give you 5 ways, 5 Machiavellian moves to reverse the chase, to make her invest, to force her to wonder, what is he thinking? Why hasn't he called? Does he want me, or am I losing him? And when she begins to question, she begins to crave. When she cannot calculate your moves, she begins to long for your approval. If you've ever begged for attention, affection, or certainty from a woman who gave you none, type "never again" in the comments. Because now, I will make sure she's the one who begs, not because you became cruel, but because you finally became unreadable. Every man wants to be understood, but the man who is always understood is always controlled. This is the paradox of power in male-female dynamics. The more predictable your actions, the more predictable her reactions. And once you become predictable, you become boring. Once you are boring, you are no longer chaste, you are tolerated. You are no longer desired, you are managed. That is why your need to be consistent, clear, available, responsive, all the things you were told make you trustworthy, are precisely what make you disposable. You thought consistency was king. You were wrong. Unpredictability is the throne. It creates tension, and tension is the oxygen of desire. When she knows when you'll call, how you'll react, what you'll say, and when you'll fold, she stops playing the game, because the game is already over. But when you delay your response without explanation, when you withdraw your presence without warning, when your emotional tone changes without a pattern, she is forced to re-engage. She is forced to recalibrate, and most importantly, she is forced to chase. Machiavelli would never let a rival see the next move. He governed not through brute force alone, but through mystery, through the veiling of intention, through the disruption of patterns, because those who are predictable become easy to attack. Those who are unpredictable must be watched, studied, feared. Now take that lesson and apply it to your interactions with women. Stop trying to be reliable in a way that feels needy. Start being unpredictable in a way that feels powerful. Change your rhythm. If you usually reply within seconds, let hours pass. If you always initiate, disappear. If you're warm and engaging one day, grow calm and distant the next. You're not punishing her. You're reminding her that you are not a pattern to memorize. You are not a pet to schedule. You are a sovereign force. And sovereigns are not easily mapped. Sovereigns are felt, not predicted. The first law is this: never let her feel certain. Certainty ends curiosity. Curiosity feeds attention. Attention feeds attraction. The moment she thinks she knows you, she stops needing to learn you. Break that pattern. Introduce confusion. Create asymmetry. Let her wonder if she still has you. And in that wondering, she'll begin to chase what you never confirmed she could keep. Desire collapses when need is exposed. The man who shows too much interest first, who leans too far in, who validates too quickly, he forfeits the frame before the game has even begun. Women do not chase what is already theirs. They do not submit to a man who signals emotional dependence. And worse, once she senses that her attention is your reward, her attraction decays. What you thought was sincerity, she perceives as weakness. What you called honesty, she sees as hunger. That is why you must adopt this second law. Appear disinterested. Control the frame. Frame is the battlefield most men never learn to fight on. It is not what's spoken, but what's assumed. The one who controls the frame dictates who is qualifying to whom. If she is the one proving herself, if she is adjusting her tone, asking what you think, following your lead, then your disinterest has already begun to command the space. But the moment you begin to overexpress, to fill silence, to reassure her of your intentions, you place yourself beneath her perception. You become the one seeking, not the one sought. Machiavelli understood that the illusion of control is as powerful as control itself. The prince does not beg the crowd for approval. He lets the people guess his favor. He rewards sparingly, punishes indirectly, and reveals little of what drives him. He allows others to invest in pleasing him, not the reverse. So too must you carry yourself. Do not correct her perception if she misunderstands your emotion. Let her wonder. Do not clarify your absence. Let her question. Do not rush to prove your affection. Let her attempt to earn it. Disinterest is not the absence of emotion, it is the weaponization of control. Speak with calm, compliment with restraint, and when she tests, remain still. Her instinct will be to push, to provoke, to measure your investment. If you react, she owns the frame. If you pause, if you smile slightly and offer nothing, you invert the dynamic. She becomes the one reaching for clarity, for approval, for reassurance. And in that reach, her desire is reborn. Understand this. You are not cold because you lack warmth. You are cold because your warmth must be earned. You do not rush to please because your presence is the reward. She cannot crave you if she does not feel the possibility of your distance. Do not tell her how you feel. Make her wonder how you feel. Do not ask her to stay. Let her work to remain. This is the frame. Own it, or serve it. And the man who serves it will always be left explaining himself to a woman who no longer listens. Words are a form of surrender. The more you speak, the more ground you give. And most men, out of fear, anxiety, or desperate need for validation, give everything away in conversation. You explain your silence. You justify your delay. You declare your intentions, reveal your fears, and confess your weaknesses, all in the name of honesty. But she is not listening for your truth. She is listening for leverage. And every word you give without necessity becomes a weapon in her hands. Machiavelli knew this. It is much safer to be feared than to be loved, he wrote, if one must choose. Why? Because fear is silent. It lives in uncertainty. It does not beg. It does not explain. A man who speaks too soon, who speaks too often, who tries to negotiate from the heart, he is already under her command. He is reactive. He is readable. And he is forgettable. But silence, strategic silence, is unforgettable. It creates space. It creates pressure. It forces her to lean into the void, to question her value, to replay every previous interaction for clues. And when a woman begins to interpret silence, she begins to obsess. The mind hates unresolved puzzles. She must solve you, but you offer no easy solution. That is power. That is presence. When she complains you don't text enough, say nothing. When she tests you with passive jabs, meet it with stillness. When she demands clarity, respond with calm ambiguity. You are not withholding to hurt her. You are withholding to control the dynamic. Because if she knows your reaction, she owns the rhythm. If she can make you speak, she knows how to move you. But if she cannot predict your voice, your tone, your next step, you own the emotional terrain. You must understand, the most attractive quality in a man is control. Not control over her, but control over himself. A man who cannot be provoked is dangerous. A man who cannot be read is magnetic. A man who speaks only when necessary is a man whose words carry weight. Let others drown in explanations. You rule with pauses. There will be moments when your silence is misinterpreted. Let it be. She will tell herself stories to fill the gap. She will chase certainty, but certainty will not come, not from you, because you are not the desperate one. You are not the one chasing. You are the one being studied in silence. So speak less, speak slower, and when you do speak, make her feel like every word is rare and every pause is loaded with meaning. The man who moves the least is often the man who commands the most. She cannot crave what she constantly receives. She cannot long for what is always offered, and she will never value what never leaves. This is the brutal truth most men never learn. Presence without scarcity breeds indifference. You think by showing up, texting often, being available, you're proving your love. But in her eyes, you're proving your predictability. You're proving your dependence. You're proving you have nowhere else to be but orbiting her attention. That is not devotion, it is exposure. And what is fully exposed is never worshipped. It is taken for granted, then discarded. Absence, on the other hand, is not neglect. It is provocation. It is oxygen withheld from the fire, not to extinguish it, but to test what burns in your absence. A woman who is genuinely drawn to you will not pull away when you go silent. She will lean in. She will feel the pull, the tension, the ache of not knowing. And in that discomfort, her desire sharpens. She begins to question herself, to wonder about you, to relive your last conversation like it held secret meanings. That is how obsession begins. Not through presence, but through distance. Machiavelli never gave the public unlimited access to his mind. He offered riddles, delays, calculated retreats. Because a ruler who is always seen, always heard, always known, loses his majesty. The same is true of men. If you are always available, you become common. If you are scarce, you become a question, and questions dominate attention. Make her feel your absence, not with bitterness, not with games, with calm precision. Cancel a plan without explanation. Delay your reply without apology. Let her texts sit unread. Miss her call, and do not explain why. The silence must feel earned. The reappearance must feel like a gift. That is how you transform your return into an event, not just a response. And when you do re-engage, do so with control, never with eagerness. You are not resuming the chase. You are allowing proximity. That is a key distinction. The man who masters absence becomes unforgettable, because he forces the woman to feel his emotional footprint even when he's not in the room. That is real seduction, not through flattery, but through strategic withdrawal. You do not need to say, "I miss you." You need her to feel, "Why hasn't he reached out?" You do not need to say, "I still want this." You need her to say, "Did I lose him?" Control is not about clinging. It's about commanding the space even when you're not in it. Affection without discrimination is weakness. Praise without merit is surrender. The man who rewards every gesture, who showers compliments for nothing, who gives attention without boundary, he destroys his own value. Women do not admire a man who gives freely. They admire the man who makes them earn. And this is the essence of the fifth law: reward selectively, starve the unworthy. You have been taught to validate often, to be generous, to reassure, but Machiavelli would spit on that doctrine. He knew that power is preserved by scarcity, not abundance. Men are more taken by the appearance of virtue than by the substance, he wrote. So give them the appearance of warmth, but only in moments you control. If you reward everything, then your rewards mean nothing. But if you reward rarely, unpredictably, and only in response to behavior that aligns with your vision, then your approval becomes currency, and she will work for it. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. You do not punish emotion. You withhold reward until loyalty, softness, or grace is proven. She gives you respect. You give affection. She honors your frame. You grant intimacy. But if she disrespects, tests, withdraws, or plays games, you starve her of response. You give her nothing, not anger, not reassurance, nothing. Selective reward rewires her psychology. If she never knows when your affection will surface, if she has to remain consistent and centered to earn it, she will begin to attach more deeply to the process. Why? Because unpredictability creates addiction, because a man who gives without explanation becomes a man who must be studied. She will spend hours thinking about what she did differently when you praised her. She will try to recreate it, and in that effort, she aligns herself with your standard, without ever realizing she's being led. And remember, praise is more powerful when it is earned. A well-timed compliment after she submits to your frame is 10 times more potent than 100 empty affirmations during her resistance. Give warmth like a king, measured, potent, deliberate. Never offer it as a beggar, immediate, constant, and unasked for. You must not fear losing her over silence. You must fear keeping her through submission. If your validation is given without cost, you will pay that price later in the form of disrespect, tests, and slow emotional decay. But if your approval is a reward, if your presence feels like a prize, then she will rise to meet you, not sink to measure you. So starve the unworthy. Feed only the behavior you want repeated. Never explain it. Let her earn it. And once she earns it, never give it predictably again. Most men lose power not because they are weak, but because they act as if strength must be apologized for. They believe that dominance must be softened, that standards must be explained, that distance must come with disclaimers. These are not just mistakes. They are invitations to be disrespected. Every time you explain yourself to avoid her disappointment, every time you chase clarity to soothe your anxiety, every time you give her more access than she earned, you chip away at your throne until you're no longer sitting on it, you're kneeling beside it. The first fatal mistake is over-communication. Men text paragraphs to explain silence, send good morning messages like it's a ritual, give updates without being asked. Why? Because you fear her disapproval more than you honor your own sovereignty. You think she's confused, but she isn't. She's simply testing how much of your time you're willing to trade for nothing, and you give it all away. The second is emotional overexposure. You speak your feelings before they mature. You confess attachment while she's still evaluating you. You label the relationship when she hasn't even committed to the idea. In doing so, you shift the burden of validation to her, and no woman desires the man she feels responsible for emotionally carrying. Machiavelli would never show his strategy to a rival. Why then do you show your entire emotional playbook to someone still deciding whether to invest? The third is confusing kindness with surrender. You believe that being agreeable will win her loyalty, so you cancel plans to be more available. You compromise your time, your routine, your self-respect just to seem like a good man. But she already has friends. She wants a man who can be kind without being compromised. She does not need your submission. She needs your direction. The fourth mistake is apologizing for standards. You state a boundary, then immediately soften it. You say what you won't tolerate, then tolerate it anyway. This tells her everything she needs to know, that your words are threats, not laws, that your values are moods, not principles. And from that moment forward, she stops listening, because she knows you don't lead. You negotiate. Finally, the most lethal mistake, proving your worth. You try to earn what should be recognized. You try to justify your silence, explain your absence, seek reassurance that you are enough. And in that need to be seen, you become invisible, because power is not proven. Power is imposed. These are the behaviors that murder desire slowly. And yet, you were taught they were the path to love. But love born of appeasement is not love. It is management. Attraction built on approval is not desire. It is tolerance. And you were not born to be tolerated. End these mistakes. Withdraw what was never earned. Let silence be your sword. Let unpredictability be your shield. And let the game come to you, not because you chased it, but because you mastered yourself. Coldness is not cruelty. It is containment. It is the refusal to spill your power just to be seen, understood, or liked. Coldness is what remains when desperation dies. It is a presence that demands attention, not through volume, but through gravity. And it is this presence, this strategic coldness that makes a man unforgettable. Not because he gives endlessly, but because he gives sparingly. Not because he is warm to all, but because his warmth is rare and earned. In a world flooded with noise and neediness, the man who carries silence, who carries stillness, who carries the aura of not chasing, is magnetic and feared. Strategic coldness is not detachment from the world. It is detachment from outcome. You do not text to see if she still likes you. You do not speak to ease her uncertainty. You do not post to get her attention. You do not react. You let her orbit. You let her wonder. You remain unmoved. Because the man who can hold his emotion without displaying it, who can feel deeply and still move precisely, he is no longer a participant in her emotional test. He is the test. You build this aura by mastering 3 disciplines. First, the discipline of delay. You do not respond immediately. You let time pass. Not to manipulate, but to signal that your attention is governed by priority, not impulse. Every delay increases your value, if that value is grounded in inner control. Second, the discipline of ambiguity. You do not always make your intentions clear. She asks, "Where is this going?" You smile. She asks, "Why did you go quiet?" You shrug. Not to play games, but to demonstrate that access to your inner world is not a right, it is a reward. The less she knows, the more she imagines, and imagination builds obsession faster than information ever could. Third, the discipline of exit. You walk away when respect is violated. You disappear without announcement. You do not explain what they already know. You do not chase what chose to test you. You do not ask for closure. You deliver consequence, because nothing enforces boundaries more powerfully than silence delivered at the moment of disrespect. Machiavelli would have admired this, not for its emotional effect, but for its political utility. A prince who can remain cold in the face of pressure, doubt, or insult commands not just respect, but fear, not terror, but psychological presence. And that is your goal, to be so internally governed that her only question becomes, "What does he think of me?" Not, "How do I control him?" Remember, warmth can be bought, smiles can be faked, but a man whose energy never leaks, whose power is not on display but felt, that man rules the dynamic. She cannot play games with a man who doesn't sit at her table. She must come to yours, and when she does, she will sit carefully. You are not cold because you are numb. You are cold because you no longer bleed for validation. And in that stillness, in that distance, in that unshakable calm, you become the only man she can't stop thinking about. You were taught that love means giving, that to keep her close, you must explain more, show more, prove more. And what did it earn you? Silence, distance, disrespect. She didn't leave because you were cruel. She left because she could predict every word before you spoke it. Because she felt no tension, no polarity, no reason to reach. Because you gave everything and made her feel nothing. Now you know the truth. Mystery is power. Distance is strategy. Indifference is leverage. And the moment you stop offering everything, you start commanding everything. Let her beg, not with cruelty, but with contrast. Let her wonder where she stands. Let her feel your silence. Let her dream of your next move while you sit calmly, saying nothing. You are not doing this to punish her. You are doing this to reclaim the throne you once gave away in the name of connection. Unpredictability, frame control, silence, scarcity, selective reward. These are not tricks. These are laws. Cold laws, Machiavellian laws. The same ones used by princes to rule kingdoms are now yours to rule attention. So say it now. I withhold to rule. Type it below if you're done chasing. If you're done proving. If you're done letting her script the story. You are the question now. Let her write the answers.